recently saw a long thread on a Facebook group for AP teachers in which someone asked whether it felt like students were getting lazier over the last few years, and if so, what is to be done about it? And clearly this question hit a nerve because the comments were voluminous. Yes, the students are lazy. They don't want to do any hard work. They've got sports commitments. Kids are dropping my course in higher numbers than ever before. Kids are just not willing to do the work. And oh my goodness, I could feel the frustration through the screen. Like, teachers are already a beleaguered population, and now they're increasingly scapegoated for our culture wars, and now there's the additional pressure of students who just don't seem to want to do the work. But at least teachers get paid a lot to deal with So I tried to say it with a straight face, I couldn't do it. So what's the solution here? Well, given that this is a highly contentious topic, I offer my potential solution, which is certainly not a complete solution, with fear and trembling. If it makes sense to you, great. If not, then feel free to print out the transcript of this video, burn it, and then dance upon its ashes. But for me, I had a revelation one day in class, and that class was particularly difficult, and it led me to ask a question that changed everything for me. Now let's begin by clearly defining the problem. And by the way, everything I'm about to say is completely anecdotal, not research-based. I happen to be in the unique position to hear from a lot of teachers from all over the country, and if everything I'm about to say doesn't seem axiomatic to you, then maybe we live in different worlds. So the problem is that our students seem less willing to tolerate the work required to do well in our classes. But then the problem is compounded because while they seem to not be willing to do the work, they simultaneously expect an A from the course. Furthermore, they appear to be under the impression that we teachers are the keepers of the A's, like we have them locked up under our desk and we hand them out according to our pleasure. It seems like they believe that A's are granted, not earned. And when they crash into the reality that grades are earned through hard work, either there's a great weeping and gnashing of teeth, or they just drop our AP courses in favor of something easy. Now, what has caused this problem? Well, there are people out there who are much smarter than me who could probably give better answers, but I'll take a stab at it. First, I don't think we can discount the devastating effect that the COVID year or years had on our students, and I don't think it should be surprising that its effects are still lingering. I can speak for myself. My classes that year were rough. It was the year of the black Zoom box. It was the year of rampant cheating and untold numbers of late assignments and countless emails asking for extensions. The point is, that year had a profound effect on our students' ability and desire to work, and it shouldn't be surprising that it's taking a long time to recover. On the other hand, second, many teachers have said that this increasing student lethargy was a pronounced problem before COVID hit. Students are absorbed in their phones and their social media, and their attention span is shortening to seconds. They spend huge chunks of time engrossed in a digital world that is designed to keep their dopamine flowing and make life as easy as possible. And so when they're confronted with schoolwork, it's a shock to the system because most of our classrooms aren't designed as dopamine factories. And then add to that the increasing commitment students have to sports and band and clubs and theater, and they have little time that they're willing to give to their studies. So that's about as well as I can define the problem, and there are probably factors I left out as well. But like I said, I think the problem and its causes are axiomatic for teachers, and what is not axiomatic is the solution to the problem, so let's talk about it. Now, that day that I had a revelation in class about this, as I said, it was a rough day. You know the kind of day I'm talking about. I liken it to the story in the Old Testament about the prophet Balaam. He was riding his donkey through a canyon, and ahead of him was an angel with a sword. The problem was the donkey could see the angel, but Balaam could not. And so the donkey, not willing to encounter this fierce being, drove Balaam into the walls of the canyon. And so Balaam starts yanking on the reins, furious at his animal for not obeying. And then the donkey just stops moving, and Balaam gets off and starts whipping the animal. Like, why don't you go where I tell you to go? And that is when the donkey speaks to Balaam. Dude, you can't see it, but there's an angel of death ahead, and I'd prefer both of us not to be killed. And that's what that day was like for me. Every time I tried to teach a lesson, it felt like I was being driven into the wall. Every time I thought I had some profound nugget of wisdom to drop, those two boys in the corner were talking and being disrupted. And no matter what I did, the donkey wouldn't go in the direction I wanted it to go. So finally, I stopped the lesson and I asked the students, and I admit that what I said was probably a little unprofessional, but I said, why are you guys making this so hard? After they sat in silence for a while, finally one of the boys in the corner raised his hand and said something that sounded simple but was actually incredibly profound. He said, because we don't want to be here. Now that was the last class of the day, so after it was over, I reflected on that answer and it changed the way I thought about my classroom. They don't want to be here. The only reason they're sitting in my class right now is because they are required by law to do so, and that is not a good motivation for buy-in to what I'm trying to do with them. At that time, I had several friends who worked for nonprofits and other voluntary organizations, and I began to wonder, what if I conceived of my classroom as a voluntary experience and didn't rely on the compulsory nature of school? Because the truth is, I don't have to do anything to have a class full of teenagers every year. They'll be there because they're made to be there, and if that's the only motivation they have to show up, no wonder they have so little desire to do the work required of them. So I started thinking about what my nonprofit friends had to do in order to keep their organizations running on volunteer power. They had to have a compelling mission. They had to tell tell resonant stories. They had to do the hard work of articulating their vision for an organization and then convincing people to give their time and their money to it. So I thought, what if I view my classroom like a voluntary organization? That means that every time we're together, I have to convince them anew that the study of history or government or whatever is worth their time. I have to create a compelling vision for the classroom that speaks to their hearts and then remind them every time we're together. In a voluntary organization, there is no other motivation for showing up than the mission to be accomplished. And so, I'm not gonna lie to you and say that from that moment on, everything changed. No, it took more than a year for me to work out what that vision was and how to persuade them to believe in it. And I certainly won't say that reminding them of this vision day in and day out solved all the problems of student lethargy, because it didn't. But I will say it did make a sizable impact on how my students existed in my classroom and how I related to them. Because now I was not merely an educator spouting off to a room full of hostile captives. I was attempting to be a leader, bringing them to a place that would ultimately make their hearts sing, and that had a way of inspiring a lot of them to join me on that journey. Okay, now in this video, all I wanted to do was explain the change of mind that I had, and I hope that was helpful to you as well. But I left a lot of the specifics on the cutting room floor, so if you'd like to hear more of those specifics, then let me know in the comments and we can start a conversation. But here's to the revolution of the voluntary classroom. Heimler out.